Very good afternoon to you and welcome to Atlantic Television Network. This is the international news from the studios of Atlantic Television Network. Let's take a look at the headlines. China pledges to encourage investment in Nigeria. Oil extends drop on easing disputes, demands concern. Attorney General issues arrest warrants for Gonzalez. Man charged after 4 shots dead on strain. Starlink backtracks. Complies with order blocking ex-UK police officer appears in court. These and many more to come your way in a moment. Please do stay with us. Welcome back, and now the details. We begin with Africa. China has pledged to encourage its powerful companies to invest in Nigeria, which is open to Chinese companies building factories and developing its energy and mineral resources. China welcomed Nigeria to its e-commerce and logistics sector and aimed to help the West African nation's economy diversify and flourish. According to a joint statement released after President Xi Jinping and his Nigerian counterpart Bola Ahmed Tinubu met on Tuesday, the two leaders held talks ahead of a summit of 50 African nations in Beijing, which China sees as an opportunity to consolidate China-Africa relations. China and Nigeria are aiming to strengthen strategic coordination and promote cooperation in the new era of China-Africa relations. They will encourage regional monetary and financial cooperation, such as local currency swaps, to promote bilateral trade. China will support Nigeria in improving its military technology, equipment, and intelligence capabilities. They will also work to maintain peace, security, and stability in the Sahel region and the Gulf of Guinea. They will cooperate on intelligence to combat money laundering and terrorist financing. The two countries plan to strengthen ties in China's Belt and Road Initiative, human resources development, and nuclear energy, according to report. The Belt and Road Initiative has already delivered massive infrastructure projects in Nigeria, from a deep-sea port to rail lines. These comprehensive strategic partnership should result in robust development, stability, and security in the West African sub-region. Nigeria's Tinubu said China is Nigeria's biggest bilateral lender, with loans amounting to $5 billion at the end of March, according to figures from Nigeria's Debt Management Office. Tinubu toured the Hawaii Research Lab and secured a commitment from Hawaii to establish a joint solar PV test lab in Nigeria. Another Chinese firm also pledged to establish an assembly plant for electric tricycles and train Nigerians in technology and renewable energy development. Oil prices fell on Wednesday, extending a plunge of more than 4% on the previous day and hovering at their worst since December, on expectations that a political dispute halting Libyan exports could be resolved and concerns over sluggish global demand. Brent crude futures for November fell 43% or 0.6% to $3.32 by 6:45 GMT after the previous session's fall of 4.9%. U.S. West Texas immediate crude futures for October were down 49% or 0.7% at $69.85 after dropping 4.4% on Tuesday. Both contracts fell to their lowest since December on signs of a deal to resolve the political disputes between factions in Libya that cut output by about half and cut exports. Asia's oil markets continue to trade amid anticipation of a deal to resolve the Libyan oil dispute. Concerns over sluggish fuel demand and weak economic indicators from China and the U.S. also impacted the market. Libya's legislative bodies agreed to appoint a central bank governor, potentially diffusing the dispute. The U.S. manufacturing PMI data indicating a faster contraction in new orders and production. It's causing growth concerns and affecting the oil demand outlook. Market sentiment weakened while China's manufacturing activity reached a 6-month low in August. Weekly U.S. inventory data has been delayed by Monday's Labor Day holiday. The reports from the American Petroleum Institute is due at 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, and data from the Energy Information Administration will be published at 11 a.m. on Thursday. U.S. crude oil and gasoline stockpiles were expected to have fallen last week, while distillate inventories probably raised, a preliminary poll showed on Tuesday. Libya's two legislative bodies agreed on Tuesday to appoint jointly a central bank governor, potentially diffusing a battle for control of the country's oil revenue that has slashed production. The House of Representatives based in Benghazi in eastern Libya and the High State Council in Tripoli in the West signed a joint statement after 2 days of talks hosted by the UN support mission in Libya. ATN gathered that they agreed to appoint a central bank governor and board of directors within 30 days. Libya's central bank is the sole legal repository of Libyan oil revenue, and it pays state salaries across the country. The two chambers also agreed to extend consultations for 5 days, including on September 9. Libya has had little peace since a 2011 NATO-backed uprising, and it split in 2014 between eastern and western factions. Major warfare ended with a ceasefire in 2020 and attempts to reunify, but divisions persist. The House of Representatives, Parliament and the High State Council were both recognized internationally in a 2015 political agreement, although they backed different sides for much of Libya's conflict. The standoff began when the head of the Presidency Council in Tripoli moved last month to oust veteran central bank governor Sadiq Al-Kabir and replace him with a rival board. These prompted eastern factions to declare a shutdown to all oil production, demanding Kabir's dismissal to be halted. The disputes threatened to end 4 years of relative stability. Some oil output has since resumed, and oil prices dropped nearly 5% on Tuesday to the lowest levels in almost 9 months, in a sign that traders expect the latest agreement to get more oil flowing. The central bank has been paralyzed by the battle for its control, leaving it unable to conduct transactions for more than a week. Underlying the issue is the country's fractured political landscape of rival governing institutions with tenuous claims to legitimacy. China, Tanzania and Zambia signed an initial agreement to rehabilitate a decades-old railway aimed at improving the rail sea transportation in resource-rich East Africa, Chinese state media said on Wednesday. President Xi Jinping witnessed the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding on refurbishing the 1,860 kilometers Tanzania to Zambia Railway Authority, TAZARA. Railway with the Tanzanian and Zambian president, who were in Beijing attending the Forum on China-African Cooperation, according to the state-run Xinhua news agency. The single-track TAZARA railway was built between 1970 and 1975 through an interest-free loan from China, offering a cargo transport route from Zambia's copper and cobalt mines to the sea on Tanzania's coast that bypassed South Africa and the former state of Rhodesia. Commercial operations of the line, derided by some Western governments at a time as the Bamboo Railway began in 1976. The multi-year project had involved the construction of 24 tunnels and hundreds of bridges by tens of thousands of Chinese and African workers. China is willing to take this summit as an opportunity to make progress in the revitalization of the Tanzania-Zambia Railway, cooperates to improve the rail-sea intermodal transport network in East Africa, and build Tanzania into a demonstration zone for deepening high-quality China-African Belt and Road Cooperation, said Xi, according to state media. Earlier this year, the World Bank approved $270 million in financing to help improve connectivity between neighbors, Tanzania and Zambia, and boost regional trade. In February, China proposed to spend $1 billion to rehabilitate the rail line through a public-private partnership model. Brazil's top foreign policy advisor on Tuesday slammed Venezuela's arrest warrants for opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez as very concerning and said there was a clear authoritarian escalation in the country. Other countries around the Americas, including the United States, Argentina, and Peru, also condemned the move. Venezuela's Attorney General has issued an arrest warrant for opposition presidential candidate Gonzalez, accusing him of conspiracy and other crimes. Brazilian foreign policy advisor Celso Amorim warns of political arrest and an authoritarian escalation in Venezuela, expressing reluctance to engage in dialogue. Brazil remains hopeful for a solution to the crisis. Later, the Brazilian and Colombian governments in a joint statement said they were profoundly concerned about the issue of the arrest warrant. Washington also criticized the warrant, which followed weeks of comments from Venezuelan government officials that Gonzalez and other members of the opposition should be jailed. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby criticized Maduro's effort to maintain power by force and refused to recognize Gonzalez's victory in July's elections. He is considering various options to demonstrate consequences. Gonzalez's lawyer Jose Vicente Haro stated he is not seeking asylum or treatment in any embassy to preserve his freedom and security. Ruling party officials, including Maduro, have accused the opposition of stoking violence, commanding fascist groups, and working at the behest of imperialist interests abroad. Criminal probes have been launched into opposition leader Maria Corina Machado and into the opposition's voter tally website, while several major opposition figures have been detained. Venezuela's National Electoral Authority and its top court have said Maduro was the winner of the election with just over half of the votes. But tallies shared by the opposition show a resounding victory for the opposition. Brazil and other countries have demanded publication of full voting tallies. Venezuela's Attorney General's office said on Monday that a court has issued an arrest warrant for opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez, accusing him of conspiracy and other crimes amid a dispute over whether he or President Nicolas Maduro won a July election. An arrest warrant has been issued against opposition leader Juan Manuel Gonzalez in Venezuela, making a significant escalation in President Maduro's crackdown on the opposition following the disputed election. While the National Electoral Authority in court claimed Maduro won with just over half of the votes, opposition tallies show a resounding victory of Gonzalez. The warrant follows weeks of comments from top government officials who have called for Gonzalez and other opposition members to be jailed. Maduro has defended his actions, stating that citizens agree that laws must work and officials do their job. The opposition Western countries and international bodies have accused the Venezuelan president-elect Edmundo Gonzalez of fraud and alleged inconsistencies in the election. They have demanded full tallies and accused Gonzalez of losing the notion of reality. The opposition has published copies of over 80% of ballot box level tallies on a public website, while the Electoral Council claims a cyber attack prevented its publication of the full tallies. The opposition has denied any wrongdoing and aims to increase support for Gonzalez, according to report. Venezuelan President Carlos Saab has requested a warrant for the arrest of opposition leader Juan Manuel Santos, who has been accused of usurpating functions, falsifying documents, instigating disobedience, conspiracy, and association against the Venezuelan state. The government has also launched criminal probes into Machado and the opposition votes tally website, leading to detentions of opposition figures and protesters. Gonzalez, who turned 75, is married and has 2 daughters. The protests have resulted in at least 27 deaths and 2,400 arrests. The U.S. has drafted a list of around 60 Venezuelan government officials and family members for sanctions following the election. The ruling party-controlled National Assembly passed a law tightening rules on NGOs and unions denouncing alleged forced resignations of state employees. The warrant request came after an aircraft used by Maduro was confiscated in the Dominican Republic. Elon Musk's satellite broadband firm Starlink on Tuesday said that it is complying with Brazil's top court order to block access to social media platform X in the country. A day after informing the country's regulator it would not obey the order. Starlink, owned by Elon Musk, has been frozen by Brazilian court Judge Alexandre de Moraes for possible use to pay fines owed to X, also owned by Musk. Despite the illegal treatment, Starlink is complying with the order to block access to X in Brazil. Brazil's telecom regulator Anatel has informed Starlink that it will not obey Moraes' order for all internet providers to block domestic access to X. An Anatel representative told newsmen, however, that Starlink had backtracked and informed the regulator on Tuesday it would conclude the blocking within hours. Anatel verified Starlink has already started to cut access to X in Brazil. X has been blocked in Brazil since last week after Moraes ordered all telecom providers in the country to shut down the social media platform for lacking a legal representative in the country, a decision later upheld by a panel of Supreme Court justices. In its post, Starlink said it had initiated legal proceedings in the Brazilian Supreme Court, explaining the gross illegality of Moraes' order that froze Starlink's finances and prevents it from conducting financial transactions in Brazil. It added that it continues to pursue all legal avenues, as are others who agreed that the judge's recent orders violates the Brazilian constitution. Starlink has lost the deadline to appeal against the freezing of its account due to the Moraes order. The dispute over X stems from a Moraes order requiring the platform to block accounts linked to alleged news and hate messages. The company closed its offices in Brazil in August, but the platform continued to be available until Moraes shut it down. 30-year-old man from Chicago has been charged with murder after 4 people were fatally shot on a train, authorities said. The suspect, identified by Forest Park police as Ronnie Davis, is accused of 4 counts of first-degree murder. The victims all appeared to be asleep on a Blue Line train in the Chicago suburb of Forest Park when they were shot just before 5:30 local time on Monday, police said. 3 of the victims were found dead at the scene, while the 4th died later in hospital, according to police. 2 of the victims have been identified by the authorities as Simeon Bihesi, 28 years old, and Andrine Collins, 60 years old. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office later said one of the other 2 victims was a 64-year-old woman named Margaret Miller. The 4th victim has been identified as a man, but his name has not yet been released. Deputy Chief for the Forest Park Police Department, Christopher Chin, said the shooting appeared to be a random act of violence, saying the gunman shot and killed 4 victims when literally they were sleeping on the train. On Tuesday, prosecutor Kim Fox described the shooting as inexplicable as she announced the charges. Police said surveillance footage showed the attacker walking through the train and shooting 4 passengers who appeared to be asleep in 2 different carriages. The 4 victims were not sitting together. The suspect is due to appear in court on Wednesday. The Blue Line train runs 24 hours a day between Forest Park and Chicago's O'Hare International Airport and is run by the Chicago Transit Authority, the United States' 2nd largest public transportation system. Gun violence is common in the United States, where there are more firearms than people. Earlier on Tuesday, police in Louisiana arrested an 11-year-old boy who is accused of fatally shooting the city's former mayor and his daughter. Columbia University students in New York City began the school year with fresh protests and increased security. The Ivy League college had some of the largest and tensest campus demonstrations in the U.S. last term, focusing on Israel's military operation in Gaza. Police reported at least 2 arrests, but described the gatherings as peaceful. Pro-Palestinian protesters outside Columbia University's Iron Gates chanted "Free Palestinian" while banging drums and marching in circles on Tuesday morning. Students and staff watched the demonstration while waiting for identification checks. The biggest disruption occurred around noon on Tuesday when the alma mater statue outside Low Memorial Library was doused with red paint by protesters, blocking off the area as a crew cleaned it. Columbia University's previous academic year ended with a police raid on a pro-Palestinian encampment, leading to over 100 arrests and a cancellation of the main graduation. The school's president, Minauchi Shafiq, resigned last month. Pro-Palestinian protesters have asked returning students to remember the reasons for their demonstrations, urging them to remember the Palestinians who died by their very dollars. The school has cancelled its main graduation and left the student body uneasy. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations at Columbia University have ended, with protesters expressing their intention to return. Most students appeared unfazed by the demonstrations, greeted each other, and even managed to navigate through security barriers. Some students, like Stephanie Lee, a graduate student, felt okay on their first day, while Rachel Black, a freshman, saw them as a welcome part of our experience. Columbia University spokesperson Samantha Slater did not acknowledge the protest, stating that the university is focused on teaching, creating, and advancing knowledge while ensuring a safe, respectful campus environment. Columbia University has held protests and counter-protests since Hamas' attack on Israel in October 2023, which left 1,200 dead and 251 taken hostages. Israel has since retaliated with a military campaign resulting in 4,000 deaths in Gaza. Pro-Israel Jewish students, including David Ledara, have expressed concern about anti-Semitism on campus, arguing that pro-Palestinian groups have not sufficiently condemned the attack or its perpetrators. They believe supporting a terrorist organization has no place at Columbia. A U.S. man has been sentenced to 13 months in prison for making over 12,000 harassing and threatening calls to the offices of congressional lawmakers. Ade Salim Lili, 35 years old, pleaded guilty in May, admitting to the court that he made the calls between February 2022 and November 2023. ATN gathered that he tried to contact some 54 members of Congress, both at their district offices and at their offices in Washington, D.C., and threatened to kill at least one staff member. The federal judge overseeing Lilly's case also sentenced him to 3 years of supervised release after he completes his present term. In February 2023, Lilly called a lawmaker over 500 times, threatening to kill him. He was arrested in November 2023 after moving to Puerto Rico. He primarily interacted with congressional staff or interns. Capitol Police Chief J. Thomas Menja revealed a 400% rise in threats against Congress lawmakers over 6 years. Hillary pleaded guilty to interstate communications and repeated phone calls, seeking 18-month sentences due to election cycle risks. On Tuesday, Chief Manager of the Capitol Police has stated that they will enforce laws involving harassment or threats. The judge emphasized the recent increase in violent attacks against politicians, citing incidents like Trump's attempted assassination and Nancy Pelosi's husband's armor attack. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after the short break. Please do stay with us. Welcome back to the broadcast of the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Open for adverts, placements, bookings, and commercials. And you can connect with us and watch us on ATN socials, Facebook and YouTube Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok Atlantic TV Network 1, X formerly Twitter Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website atlanticnetwork.tv. And now to the rest of our stories. Authorities have identified 27-year-old Nicholas Paul Grab as the Pinnacle Man after finding his body frozen in a Bamsu, a national missing persons database, and the FBI was able to uncover Grab's identity in less than an hour. The coroner's office said the discovery highlighted the considerable effort taken to identify unclaimed bodies. They added that the Pinnacle body had been unsuccessful compared to around 10 missing people in the last 15 years. And the body's 2019 exhumation for DNA proved similarly fruitless. Officials were considering reburying his remains when the discovery of his identity was made, they said. Grab, known as Nicky to his family, had served with the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, they said, and received an honorable discharge in 1971. The coroner's office said his family was very appreciative of the efforts to identify him. Former aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul was charged on Tuesday with secretly acting as an agent of the Chinese government in exchange for millions of dollars in compensation and gifts, including meals of gourmet duck. Linda Soon, 41 years old, and her husband Chris Hu, 40 years old, pleaded not guilty to criminal charges before U.S. Magistrate Judge Peggy Koo in Brooklyn after being arrested on Tuesday morning. Federal prosecutors in Brooklyn allege that Soon, a state government official, allegedly blocked Taiwanese government representatives from meeting with officials and arranged for a high-level New York state official to visit China. In exchange, Chinese government representatives arranged for millions of dollars in transactions for Soon's business partner, who had business activities in China. The money was used to buy a 2020 Ferrari Roma sports car and $6 million property. Hochul's office fired Soon in March 2023 after discovering misconduct evidence. Soon was released on $1.5 million bond and Hu on $500,000 bond. With the next court appearance scheduled for September 25th. Hochul was not accused of any wrongdoing. Soon, a former deputy chief of staff for Hochul has been charged with working on behalf of China and Russia without proper registration with the U.S. Department of Justice. Soon's lawyer, Jarod Schäfer, expressed disappointment at the charges. China's embassy in Washington has not commented on the situation yet. Last month, Chinese academic Wang Shujun was convicted in federal court in Brooklyn for collecting information about New York-based activists supporting democracy in China and sharing his findings with Beijing. Soon faces 8 counts, including failure to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act and money laundering conspiracy. Who faces 3 counts, including bank fraud conspiracy. 7 Republican-led states have filed a lawsuit challenging President Biden's student debt forgiveness plan, claiming the U.S. Department of Education is canceling loans. The lawsuit follows the Supreme Court's rejection of a previous plan designed to lower monthly payments and expedite loan forgiveness for some borrowers. State attorneys generals in Georgia and Missouri have filed a lawsuit against the Education Department's proposed rule, which would allow a waiver of federal student loan debt for 27.6 million borrowers. They claim that the department has instructed federal loan services to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars of loans before the rule was finalized, potentially leading to overnight cancellation of at least $73 billion in loans and billions in further debt relief. Education Department is facing a lawsuit for $169 billion in debt relief for nearly 4.8 million people, following the approval of $169 billion in debt relief for nearly 4.8 million people under President Biden. The lawsuit is the latest legal challenge to the Democratic president's efforts to provide debt relief to millions of Americans. Republican-led states successfully blocked a $430 billion Biden-sponsored program, which would have canceled up to $20,000 in debt per borrower for 43 million Americans. The administration then pursued the saving on a valuable education plan, which aimed to lower monthly payments and speed up loan forgiveness. The Supreme Court declined to lift the injunction on August 28. The latest plan relies on a different statute than those, a provision of the Higher Education Act that several leading Democrats, including U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren, have long argued provides the administration authority to cancel student debt. Texas woman Elizabeth Wolfe has been formally indicted for the attempted drowning of a Palestinian-American Muslim girl in May, allegedly motivated by racial bias. The 42-year-old was charged in the Tarrant County grand jury indictment that included a hate crime enhancement, potentially increasing her sentence. Wolfe, whose representative could not immediately be reached for comment, was charged with attempted capital murder of a person under 10 years of age and intentionally causing bodily injury to a child. According to police reports, the incident in May occurred at the apartment complex swimming pool in the Dallas-Fort Worth suburb of ULS. When the suspect argued with the mother of the 3-year-old girl, who was also at the pool with 6-year-old son, and asked where they were from. The suspect tried to drown the 3-year-old and attempted to grab the 6-year-old boy, the police report said. The mother was able to pull her daughter from the water, police said. Local medics responded to the scene and the children were medically cleared. Human rights advocates have warned about rising threats against American Muslims, Arabs, and Jews since the eruption of Israel's war in Gaza. Other recent alarming U.S. incidents include the October fatal stabbing of a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy in Illinois, the February stabbing of a Palestinian-American man in Texas, and the November shooting of 3 Palestinian-American students in Vermont. A former Cornell University student was sentenced in August to 21 months in prison for posting online threats against Jews, and a Jordanian citizen in Florida was charged over threats against business over perceived support of Israel. Leaders of South Korea and New Zealand strongly condemned the deepening military cooperation between North Korea and Russia as they met on Wednesday for a summit meant to strengthen bilateral ties. New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon arrived in Seoul, the South Korean capital, on his first trip to the Asian country since he took office last November. Luxon and South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol condemned in the strongest possible terms the expanding military ties between North Korea and Russia, including North Korea's export of ballistic missiles to Russia in violation of UN Security Council resolutions, according to a joint statement released by Luxon's office. The two leaders denounced in the most serious of terms North Korea's illegal nuclear and missile development programs. They also strongly condemned Russia's war against Ukraine and pledged to continue to support the sovereignty of Ukraine and its efforts to secure a just and lasting peace, according to the joint statement. During the summit, Yoon and Luxon decided to launch a regular conventional arms to Russia to support its invasion of Ukraine in return for military and economic assistance. Worries about the North Korean-Russia ties deepened in June when North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a pact stipulating mutual military assistance if either country is attacked. Approximately doubled in the past decade, according to the joint statement. Philippines Senator Guo has been accused of concealing her Chinese nationality to run for public office, which is reserved for Filipino citizens only. She was dismissed for grave misconduct by the ombudsman. In July, Marcos ordered an immediate ban on Chinese-run online gaming operations, accusing them of human trafficking, torture, kidnappings, and murder. The crackdown was backed by Beijing. The online gambling industry has flourished due to corruption and payoffs. Filipino President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. thanked the Indonesian authorities after Guo fled the Philippines in July. She was tracked in Malaysia and Singapore before turning up in Indonesia. Two companions who reportedly slipped out of the Philippines with her without going through normal immigration and clearing procedures were recently arrested in Indonesia. Guo, a Filipino mayor in Bamban, was accused of helping establish a gambling hub in the town. A Senate committee arrested her after she refused to appear in hearings on the illegal gambling business under Duterte's predecessor. Guo has also been accused of concealing her Chinese nationality to run for public office, which is reserved for Filipino citizens only. At the time, a few senators suggested she may be working as a Chinese spy. Guo has denied any wrongdoing but was dismissed from her post for grave misconduct by the Ombudsman, an agency that investigates and prosecutes government officials accused of crimes, including graft and corruption. Marcos in the Philippines has banned Chinese-run online gaming operations, accusing them of human trafficking, torture, kidnappings, and murder. The crackdown supported by Beijing has led to the shutdown of complexes and allegations of illegal recruitment and working conditions. The industry's growth is attributed to corruption and officials' payoffs. Around 8,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled to Bangladesh in recent weeks, escaping violence in Myanmar's Rakhine state. The violence intensifies as fighting between Myanmar's ruling junta and the Arakan army worsens. Bangladesh is already overburdened and unable to accommodate more Rohingya, according to reports by newsmen on Wednesday. The Bangladesh government has not previously provided any estimate of how many Rohingya have crossed over in the last few months. The government will hold a serious discussion at the cabinet within the next 2 to 3 days to address the crisis. Bangladesh de facto Foreign Minister Mohammed Tawhid Hossain told reporters late on Tuesday. Bangladesh Hossain expressed sympathy for Rohingya refugees, but stated the country cannot provide full humanitarian shelter. Tens of thousands held rallies in camps on August the 25th, marking the 7th anniversary of the 2017 military crackdown. ATN gathered that over 1 million Rohingya currently live in overcrowded camps in southern Bangladesh with little hope of returning to Myanmar, where they are largely denied citizenship and other basic rights. The recent surge in violence is the worst the Rohingya have faced since the 2017 Myanmar military-led campaign, which the United Nations described as having genocidal intent. Rohingya who recently fled to Bangladesh have urged the government to provide them with shelter. Last month, Hossain told reporters that Bangladesh cannot accept more Rohingya refugees and called on India and other countries to take greater action. He also urged the international community to apply more pressure on the Arakan army to cease attacks on the Rohingya in Rakhine state. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will meet with Singapore counterpart Lawrence Wong during a 2-day visit to the city-state starting on Wednesday. Singapore's government said Modi will also meet Singapore President Tharman Shanmugaratnam and former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong and Goh Chok during the trip, his fifth Singapore and first since 2018. He will also participate in a business roundtable with local business leaders and meet semiconductor players. Modi will be accompanied by Indian government officials, including the Foreign Minister and National Security Advisor. Indian sports supports a policy of development and not expansionism, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in Brunei on Wednesday, though he did not name any country. Brunei is located south of the South China Sea, which is claimed almost entirely by Beijing. Ties between India and China have been strained since 20 Indian and 4 Chinese troops were killed in a border clash on their Himalayan frontier in 2020. Modi also said India supports freedom of navigation and overflight under international laws, similar to the United Nations Convention and on the Law of the Sea, which provides a framework for global maritime navigation and regulates use of marine resources. Russian company Komsomolsk Amur has been cleared to import beer from North Korea, indicating the strengthening of ties between Moscow and Pyongyang. This comes amid international scrutiny of North Korea's arms trade, which the U.S. and South Korea accuse of supplying to Russia for Ukraine use. ATL learned that ties between Pyongyang and Moscow have been blossoming recently. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited North Korea for the first time in 24 years in June to hold a summit with Northern Korea leader Kim Jong-un. The North Korean beer will be imported by a company named Vostobertrade, which was registered in June. Russia's RBC Business Daily reported, citing documents. North Korea has recently ramped beer production in an effort to earn foreign currency through exports. Daily NK, a Seoul-based website that releases news and information based on sources inside North Korea, reported last month. The move to allow beer imports comes after Russian authorities recently announced the export of prized horses and the shipment of more than 400 goats to North Korea. Last month, Russia's Primorsky Interregional Office of Russell Cox Nadzo said it monitored the export of 24 Olaf Trota sport horses to North Korea at the Kherson Railway checkpoint, with all horses microchipped. The Olaf Trota is prized for its speed and stamina. North Korea's Kim is known to be a keen horseman, and the last batch of horses was delivered to the country in 2022. Danish police on Wednesday apprehended activist Greta Thunberg at a Copenhagen protest against the war in Gaza. A spokesperson for the student group organizing the demonstration said 6 people were detained at the scene at the Copenhagen University after some 20 people had blocked the entrance to the building and 3 entered, a police spokesperson told newsmen. Police declined to confirm the identities of any of those arrested, but a spokesperson for the students against the occupation told newsmen that Thunberg had been held. And that's it on the international news for today. Let's take a look at the headlines. We told you that China pledges to encourage investment in Nigeria. Oil extends drop on easing dispute, demands concern. Attorney General issues arrest warrants for Gonzales. Also, we told you a man charged of short debt on trade. Starlink backtracks comply with order blocking X. X police officer appears in court. And that's it on the international news for today. I am Victor Peter. Many thanks for being tuned. You can connect with us. You can follow us on our social media platforms. On X, formerly Twitter, is at Atlantic TV Net. Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network. Instagram at Atlantic TV Network. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Wendy comes up next with business news.